Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution. You know, sometimes we will speak of, well, what does that mean for us today? But I'd like to read a passage from Tacitus. Now, if somebody says, well, who is he? Well, you'll see that he was almost a contemporary with things that happened in the last part of the first century. Well aware, and was able to write truth. And here's what he said. Speaking of Christians, he said, this pernicious superstition, though checked for a while, broke out again and spread. This is Christianity. Not only over Judea, the source of this evil, but reached the city also. Well, you can tell by the way he's writing, he's not so much a friend of Christianity. He said, whither flow from all quarters all things vile and shameful, and where they find shelter and encouragement. At last they were only apprehended who confessed themselves of that sect. Afterwards a vast multitude discovered by them, all of which were condemned, not so much for the crime of burning the city, as for their enmity to mankind, their executions. He's writing now in a very specific way about the persecution of Christians. Their executions were so contrived as to expose them to derision and contempt. Some were covered with the skins of wild beasts and torn to pieces by dogs. Others were crucified. Others, having been daubed with a combustible material, were set up as lights in the nighttime and thus burned to death. Nero made use of his own gardens as a theater upon this occasion, and also exhibited the diversions of the circus, sometimes standing in the crowd as a spectator, in the habit of a charioteer, at other times driving a chariot himself, till at length these men, though really criminal, that's how he's describing Christians, and deserving exemplary punishment, began to be commiserated as people who were destroyed, not out of regard to the public welfare, but only to gratify the cruelty of one man. The way he describes the persecution, far to the extreme of what typically people in the United States are persecuted. And it was the case too that while still we might say generally, at least as far as the Christian when he does right, is not persecuted by the state, this particular time, just to be a Christian was almost perceived as being an enemy of the state. And so they were persecuted unto death. There's places in the world you could go today, though the exact forms of persecution that were received under Nero might not so much exist still. The idea of somebody pouring something combustible on you and then lighting you and you become the torch that lights a garden. I don't know if that happened today. But still, men are persecuted today. But if we were to ask ourselves, how is our faith when our faith is challenged? And if we were living in that time where it could be that animal skins are put on us and dogs are sent to tear us under, or if it's they're going to put something combustible on us and light us to be torches in the night, will we hold true to our faith and still make that confession that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God? If we could assist you in your obedience tonight, if it's a need for baptism, as you're a penitent believer, if there's a need for prayer, we ask you to come as we stand and sing.